So sometimes it's always helpful for me to start a sermon with a confession. For some reason, that has been my thing, so we'll just continue that. Maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I will. I've never really given much thought to the season of Advent before becoming a pastor. I knew what Advent was, of course, growing up in the church. I knew that it led up to Christmas. But most of my life wasn't surrounded by the traditions of Advent. Of course, we did the lighting of the Advent candle on Sunday. But everything was leading up to the big day, Christmas. I do consider myself a fairly faithful person, but for some reason, Advent was never something that I took seriously, or that I found really meaningful than any different time of the year. It was really waiting for Christmas. But I have to tell you, after becoming a pastor a couple years ago, serving at Grace, and of course now, having to write sermons and dig deep into the liturgical calendar forced me to dig into what Advent actually means. And it has enriched me in many ways. And I'm so grateful for this, because I think I have become finally in tune with what Advent means for me. And it has brought my faith to another level. And I appreciate that. In our Christian tradition, we have high holy days, and we've got Lent, which obviously leads to the crucifixion and the rising of Jesus Christ. And that means a lot to me. But for some reason, like I said, Advent has become more meaningful to me in recent years. Perhaps it is the idea of Advent meaning to slow down, of reflection, of really thinking about what it is to be a person of faith, to be a Christian, what it is to be a part of this church community. And most importantly, on this first day of Advent today, I ask, how does my faith give me hope? Hope in a world that is so hard to find hope in. What does Advent mean for me with the terrible news, with war and violence and poverty and so much destruction? I am grateful for the gift of Advent, for that time of reflection, because it pauses me to think, how do we celebrate hope? And how do we do that in a world that is not very hopeful? The first Sunday of Advent, the universal theme is hope. We have an anticipation of the birth of Christ's coming. As I said, Advent is supposed to be a time of slowing down, a time of anticipation, of reflection, of really looking at the gift that we are about to receive, the miracle of the birth of Christ. And that goes against everything we think of when we think about the Christmas season. How many of you spent a lot of time this last week just reflecting, not doing much? It goes against everything, the hustle and the bustle. How many of you went shopping on Black Friday? And I'm not shaming you at all. I'm saying, as the start of the Advent season, how many of you spent the day in reflection? Not me. I was trying to fight the shopping madness, right? How many of us are busy decorating our houses right now, figuring out what gifts to give everybody, figuring out how to get family together and celebration and food and all that fun stuff? It is hard to fight the commercialism of Christmas. I know, because I fight against it. But it goes against, I believe, everything that Advent is about, and that is a hard thing to reconcile in my head. My challenge for myself and my challenge for everybody here, as hard as it might be, slow down for just a minute a day. Just a minute a day. Just at least during this Advent season, 1 minute a day to slow down and pause. And that is a hard time of the year to be doing this, as I said. It's a spiritual practice, and it takes practice. And I know for many of us it will be challenging. When I slow down, my head is still racing with 100 different things. And when I pause, I start to get anxiety about all the things I should be doing. I'm the worst yoga meditative person in the world, because all it does is cause me anxiety. And in my head, I'm making lists of everything I could be getting done while I'm wasting my time trying to meditate. Welcome to my brain. It is a spiritual practice to take a deep breath, but it is so needed right now. This is the coming of Christ, nothing short of a miracle. It is the least we can do for 1 minute a day to just take a breath, to breathe in the spirit of Advent, that spirit of waiting, the spirit of patience. As people of faith, we are called to do this, to give glory to God in the moments of silence, to recognize that God is present no matter what. Again, to give thanks to God for the witness of the miracle that is coming in a few weeks, Jesus' birth. Obviously, you probably figured that one out. I didn't need to say it. What does this mean for you to take a pause for just a minute? And I mean, what does it mean truly? Not just coming to church to hear a sermon, not just talking about Advent and enjoying the music and the candle lighting and the traditions and all of the rituals that we have during church, but what does it mean to do this outside of the church? To go back to your lives and incorporate this spiritual practice, a reminder to pause, a reminder of the incredible gift that is coming, to be present in a moment. And I'm not saying 5 minutes. See, I only said 1 minute. That's how, right? I said 5 at first, and I thought that would be too challenging. So 1 minute. This is the least we can do, like I said, to give honor to God for the gift of his son, Jesus. I think the benefit for me of taking that pause and intentionally thinking about where is God present in that moment helps me reflect on where I find God throughout my day. And again, in a world of destruction, in a world of violence, in a world right now where we are so busy in the hustle and bustle, we can forget that God even exists because we're too busy. Advent calls us to be more present. This holy and sacred time is a time for us to remember where we find our hope, where we find those God moments in our lives. We each have them. I worked in a treatment center for a while, and when I would ask people, I did a spirituality group, and I would ask, I was going to say the inmates, the residents, prison, same thing. I would ask the residents, where do you practice spirituality? What kind of spiritual beliefs do you have? And of course, they immediately would talk about not going to church. And they would mix up, of course, religion, church, and spirituality. And I would always say, those are all different things. I think spirituality, your practice of spirituality, is where is it? When is it? Who are you with when you find those moments of God, of peace? The moment when all of the world is perfect, when you feel a connectedness to something bigger, when your heart feels content, where your heart feels content. Now, you would not believe how many people answered a deer stand or in a boat fishing. And then they thought that was wrong because they felt like it had to be church. And I said, absolutely not. Anywhere you find this is a spiritual practice. So when I talk about taking that moment, you don't have to go to church to do it. You don't have to be in a certain place with certain candles. It is where is it? Where is it that you find that moment of peace? If you have a hard time finding this, one of the things that I find helpful is thinking back to a time, maybe a memory from your life where you can recall that feeling where the world just felt perfect. And sometimes when I can't figure out how to find it, or I forget what that feels like, I think of something from my own life, and I will share it with you. As many of you know, I have a daughter who I adopted from Guatemala. It was quite the process. I was stuck in the country for much longer than I thought I would be. 3 days turned into 5 weeks. It was very stressful. I brought her home, and my family was there at the airport, welcoming us back from what was quite the journey. And that night, I laid my daughter in her crib, and she was crying a bit. And I laid on the wood floor next to her, and I put my hand up, and I just held her hand. And she quieted down. I slowly got up, and I looked over the crib, and there she was, my daughter, finally home after what was just a long journey of almost 2 years of waiting. She was sound asleep. This beautiful human being, safe and sound, and my home. That moment, as you can hear the quiver in my voice, will never, ever go away from me. The world was absolutely perfect. I was at peace. The presence of God was so there. I will never, ever forget that moment. And that's the story, that's the memory I go to when I start to think, how do I find that feeling? What does that feel like? And I go back to that moment, and immediately all of the hustle and bustle and the 25,000 things I've got going on in my head go away. And I just picture looking over in that dark room, knowing that God was so present and the world was perfect. Reminding me, finding these memories when we can't find those moments now is helpful because it does slow us down, even if we are intentionally not trying to find something in that moment where we're looking. These are what I call God moments. God moments. Now, this might be going down on a ledge, but I want you to raise your hand if you've ever felt a God moment. If you can remember a time. I won't call on you, I promise, right? Yeah. We all have those moments where we might not realize what's happening, but all of a sudden we have this aha. I call it God is on the loose. God is on the loose. But what is demanding and hard for us is to recognize the importance of those moments, to take time during this Advent to be intentional about finding those moments. That to me is the gift of Advent. Among the season of hustle and bustle, let us not forget, God is present. And even if we don't have that moment where it's perfect, even in the midst of our grief, of our loss, in moments of sadness, in moments of feeling loneliness, also within our joy and our gladness, times of struggle, in times where we are just feeling content, God is always there. And we say that all the time, and we do believe it, but I don't think we can remind ourselves enough. God is always there. We are the ones that get too busy to forget. We're the ones that forget that God is there. And Advent this year, this time of year, is such a great reminder for us to acknowledge that presence of God. Let us not pass that gift up. It's an incredible gift. This last couple of months, as I've started this job and trying to balance both jobs, it has been a gift. A little bit crazy making, in a good way. Promise, it's all good. But I am busier than ever, and I'm trying to balance meetings and things like that. And I've had moments where I feel like, God, what have you done? Like, I really want to go work at Quick Trip right now, right? It just seems easier, and I get coffee and a good chicken sandwich. And then I remember vocation is a gift, right? I come here, and I see all of these dedicated, faithful people who are doing God's work, And I'm reminded of the presence of God. Now, one of these days, about 2 weeks ago, where I was feeling a little bit stressed out, and I went to see one of my favorite hospice patients. I may have shared this story, I don't know, but I have to share it again because it just reminds me of all of you here. So I headed up to Merrill, and I thought, we're just going to get this over with. Sometimes that's what it's like seeing patients. I hate to say that, but when you're tired and you don't know what to expect, that's kind of the reality. So Sister Dorothy, one of my dear favorite patients, who I love seeing, she and I have wonderful visits together. We talk about our favorite Catholic hymns. We talk about how she was a former chaplain, and now I have to be on because I feel judged because she was a former chaplain. We know how that can be. But she's a deep woman of faith. And she's also scared because she knows she's dying. And we talk a lot about that. And yet, as she cries, her fears, her fear of death, her fear of what that process is going to be like, her faith is unwavering, but fear is real when you come to that end of life. And at the end of each visit, and somehow this hit me when I saw her last week, at the end of each visit, we hold hands. And she's the one that started this. And we always sing together, "Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go." Now, you all know that song here, right? And when we sing that song, I teared up. And then that Sunday when I came here and I heard that song, I thought, God, you are alive, right? It was that simple sharing of that song. And so my spiritual practice now every morning, instead of sitting in silence, I sing that to myself. Because I experience the presence of God when Sister Dorothy and I sing that to each other, and we hold hands and we wish peace be with each other. And as we end that here every Sunday, I'm reminded that we are sending you off, sending all of us off with God's peace. And how amazing is that? Wishing God's peace in your heart, in your soul, no matter what you're going through. Wishing God's peace together is incredibly powerful. So every time I leave Sister Dorothy, I also think of this congregation, and I think, I don't want to work at Trip Trip. I want to still be doing those two jobs, so we're all safe there. We just got to keep singing that. My friends, Advent is an incredible gift to us. A gift that is so holy and sacred. Let us not pass that up with the hustle and the bustle. Be present to one another. For those of you that are grieving during the holidays, be tender with one another. Be present with one another. We are awaiting nothing less than the miracle of Jesus Christ. May we be the reminder for each other in all of the days ahead. Amen.